Hello, friends. This is Jesse Juarez, president of the Rotary Club of sunny Seaside, California. You're watching a presentation which was recorded live at one of our club meetings. Seaside Rotary meets via Zoom twice a month. Our meetings feature dynamic presentations from many of the movers and shakers that make Monterey County such a vibrant and hardworking community. If you'd like to join a meeting or learn more about Rotary and the work that we do, you can reach out to Seaside Rotary Club at gmail.com. Again, that's Seaside Rotary Club at gmail.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel for more dynamic content. To Mr. Steve McShane to introduce our guest speaker.
Sure. Well, it's a pleasure to have our speaker with us today, representing the Monterey County Vintners and Growers. This is an organization that our speaker has taken to a new level, representing growers, processors, marketers. There's more than 60 folks that are part of this organization that really represent Monterey County's exceptional brand when it comes to wine, strategic partnerships and the like. Our speaker today has decades of experience consulting in brands and strategic communication and management, having worked with First Five. She's been with the Monterey County Vintners and Growers 5 years now. I can say I personally worked very closely with her on a number of really cool events and projects to promote and grow Monterey County grown and produced wines. So to better understand the industry and to better understand and know Monterey County Vintners and Growers, today our guest speaker is Kim Stemler, the executive director. So please help me in welcoming her.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephen. It's really great to see you all. And to see those of you that I love so deeply on this call. You know who you are. I am in the Rotary Club of Monterey with Jared's dad. It's the old guys club. I think I was one of 5 women when I initially started almost 20 years ago with them. And it's still an old guys club, I've got to say. But so I love Rotary. Let's go to the presentation. Oops, you know what? I need screen sharing, and then you don't have to look at me. So if we were together, and I hope that you will invite me back after we can be together in person, we would be sampling wine. And if I didn't have a bunch of other meetings this afternoon, I would be drinking wine with you, but that's not going to happen. Okay. What I would like to do is, so sometimes wine can be so intimidating that I just think it's good to start off with a general background. So everybody feels comfortable so that wine is accessible, and happy to have conversations afterwards. I'll go through my presentation relatively quickly, but we want you to feel part of the Monterey wine family. So that is my goal today in being here, is that you know about Monterey wines, that you're part of the Monterey wine family, and that you are also an evangelist for us as well. So let's see. Wine's been around for so long, for, really since the beginning of time. And actually you're on mute. I can't ask you questions. Normally I ask you questions, but I won't. Okay, have to reorient. So if you leave a piece of fruit on a tree or on a counter, what happens? It rots and ferments. We hear these stories of drunken monkeys. So what wine is fermented grapes. It's something that occurs naturally in nature. And then it is something that humankind, took to drinking. So after the animals realized it was a fun party, then about 6,000, although actually that now they're finding it's more like 8,000, 12,000 years ago, people started drinking wine, and there was residue found in a Sicilian cave. And I think the 8,000, 12,000 is more Armenia. They're finding residues of wine. which is really amazing. Now then, we probably wouldn't have liked that wine too much. It was really just pure grapes fermented. It didn't have any kind of the extra added care or it's care. It's attention that we pay to it right now. One of the reasons that I like being in the wine business is not because I like selling alcohol. It's because for me, wine is about culture. It's about joy. It's about family. It's about creating history together, bringing people together. No other alcoholic beverage has that. You know, maybe in Russia, vodka might. But really, wine has that throughout the world. It is a joyful product. It means we come together as family. We come together as one. So I really love that. It's also mentioned so much biblically, turning wine into water. So let's go to Monterey County now. Actually, we have grapes growing in this county that are supposedly still here from the 1700s, and it's a very religious practice. It was brought by the missionaries in the 1700s. The Franciscan monks planted grapevines, and actually throughout the world, that is who spread grapevines. It was missionaries throughout Europe. That's who spread grapevines. So then, you know, in the 1800s, there wasn't much activity in wine. And then in the early 1900s, in 1919, a man named Charles Tam, you will not be tested on these names, came from France. And his family had grown wine in Bordeaux. He was very familiar, in Burgundy. He was very familiar with wine. And he was looking for a place in California that was similar to Burgundy. So two of the main growing regions, not all of the growing regions in France, are Bordeaux and Burgundy. Bordeaux is hot. If you think Cabernet Sauvignon, it's hot. Burgundy is cooler. That can grow more Pinot Noir or Chardonnay varietals. That's not what they call them in French, but that's what they call them here. So he found Chalone. Does everybody know where Chalone is? On the Gabilan Mountains over near the Pinnacles. If you're driving to Pinnacles, that whole area is Chalone. And he actually thought that it was the most like France that he could find, at least the Burgundy region. So he started planting grapes there. There were also some grapes planted in Carmel Valley as well. And these grapes that he planted at Chalone are actually still there. So I hope that you make the time to go out and visit. Chalone's open on weekends. Right now, nobody can provide tastings, but it's still open for you to go buy wine. And it is so worth a visit to the property. I really should put a picture of the vines on this. They don't trellis them. They just hang low. It's Chenin Blanc and some Chardonnay vines, and they're over 100 years old. They still make wine from these original grapes planted by Charles Tam. Prohibition happens if we're looking at timeline, and the wine industry goes through, as all alcoholic industries go through, a lot of different phases. Luckily, wine was still able to be produced for ceremonial services for churches. Again, thank you to religions for continuing the practice of drinking wine. Some really cool things that happened during the Prohibition. They used to make these bricks out of compressed grapes. So they would just put them in bricks. They would sell the bricks and label it and say, do not add water or sugar. And of course, because we're human, we add water and sugar, and it would make homegrown wine or homemade wine. There were lots of creative ways, but still the industry really suffered. And actually the industry still suffers by the effects of some of the regulatory things that were put in place post-Prohibition. So then in 1960, so wine started to get a little more popular as we're getting closer to the 50s and 60s, and Napa started planting a little bit more. And then in 1960, there was a really big UC Davis report that came out, and the wine industry pays attention to UC Davis. We still do. UC Davis and Cal Poly are some of our key research partners, and they're very well respected within the industry. They came out and they said, if you want to look at premier wine growing regions, Monterey County is one of the best. If you want to grow Burgundy wines, so that is Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, you should be planting in Monterey County. So during the 60s, about 2,500 acres were planted. And a lot of this based on this information. Wente Vineyards is the oldest winery in the United States. They started actually in the 1800s. They are a wonderful family. They're based in Livermore. And they came to Monterey County and planted grapes in the 60s. They still have grapes growing. And again, great partners with Monterey County. Mirassou planted for Paul Masson and started with a small amount of acreage, and they just kept increasing. Then in the 1970s, there were tax credits, and all of ag. So please know, all of ag, it's business. So everybody's in it for the money, right? Wine is a little different. You have to be in it for the money, but really there's not a lot of money in wine. So you also have to be in it for the passion. So what happened between 1960s and 1970s is we went from having 2,500 acres to 25,000 acres planted. That's really tremendous. So two reasons, because the UC Davis report came out and said, this is premium growing region. This is a premium growing region. And because they got tax credits to plant grapes, which is great. So we learned a lot about what grapes to plant and what grapes not to plant. And it was really interesting because even though the UC Davis report said plant Burgundy grapes, a lot of Bordeaux varietals got planted in the northern Santa Lucia Highlands, and we'll talk about that in a moment. That's Cabernet Sauvignon, and that does not do well in cool growing regions. So it took us a while to figure out what grapes actually work and where they work in this county, and we'll talk about that. And really in the 1970s, it was more of a commodity. So everybody know the difference between commodity and specialty. Commodity is you're just selling this bulk. If you think about lettuce, probably the wrong thing. Think about broccoli. It's just bulk. So you're just selling it on the market. The price will change every day. It doesn't really have a distinct flavor that's representative of the vineyard. Now, and by the 90s, Monterey County's grapes had really changed more to a specialty crop, where it was really distinct, had premium flavors. We could raise the price point, makes beautiful wines. We still have a lot of wine that goes into the large brands. And again, we'll discuss this in a moment. But it's still wonderful wine. So even though it might be considered a commodity, we would still consider it specialty. So what happened between 1990 and now is we become more of a premium luxury product. Does anybody know who this wonderful man is? Raise your hand, anybody? He's awesome, go visit him. This is Dennis Hoey of Odonata Winery. It's the most northern winery and tasting room on River Road. Great man. His goal, besides making beautiful wine, is to bring new winemakers into just to grow new winemakers. So if you're interested, go talk to Dennis. So what happened then is we had some smaller folks come in. So we were seeing larger folks like J. Lore in the 70s buying up land. We already mentioned Wente. Jackson Family Wines comes in. Jess Jackson, who was the founder of Jackson Family Wines, came in and said, I have to have land here. He buys land. But then we start to see smaller folks come in. There are quite a few people in wine that are also in row crops. So Gary Pizzoni, as an example, Pizzoni Wines, some of the best around, his family grew. They're Swiss Italian, and they'd been here since the 1800s, and they were growing row crops. And Gary really thought that their land also was ideal for, some of their land up in the higher benchlands was ideal for wine grapes. And his family was fine with him expanding that. And that's how we got Pizzoni wine. So that happened a lot, you know, where we had these row crop families who happened to have land that was really ripe for wine, and they planted and it worked. So what's really different about our region compared to like Sonoma Coast or Santa Barbara, besides just temperature? We have something that is going to protect us from climate change and will let us be one of the few wine regions in California that continue. And that is not this actually, but it has to do with this. In the middle of the Monterey Bay is a really deep canyon. It's a submarine canyon. It's why we're still discovering animals that we've never seen before. You know, all of the aquarium and all of the other marine research labs go out and go 2 miles deep and they find these creatures they've never seen. So, and that trench is 60 miles long. It's actually the biggest submarine canyon on the west coast of the Americas. And the way it is positioned relative to the way the 2 mountain ranges of the Salinas Valley are positioned is the effects of the upswelling of the cold water from that submarine canyon, combined with the hot air that's coming up from Paso and funneled through the valley. So what happens is that hot air pulls the cold air down the valley and creates fog at the mouth, and then wind almost every day. So if you go to Greenfield, the trees grow like this, right? It's that daily wind. That daily wind is our blessing. And it's all because of the relationship between the submarine canyon and the way the mountain ranges are in the Salinas Valley. So, and also because of this, you know, normally regions will grow, you can grow, you know, like 20 varieties if it's a large region. We actually grow around 52 to 53 varietals. That's a lot of different grape varietals. Over 30 of those, we grow more than 10 acres. So what's the reasoning? I had a European journalist come and say, that's too many. That just sounds like your region doesn't know what it's doing. But that's not it. Once we talked about it, we really, you know this. Everybody that lives here brings around, you know, layers in their car, right? You always have to have a jacket, no matter where you are. We have so many microclimates in this county that, you know, just a block away could be a very different microclimate. You know, if you're in a valley, if you're up on a hillside, it's very different. And because of those microclimates, and because, you know, our growers are farmers, if you think about that, we know how to grow grapes. So we know where the best grapes get planted. Also, there is definitely a geeky side to wine. You know, part of the trade is very, very, very geeky. And if you ever talk to a master somm, you know, they're able to name a vineyard that a wine comes off of just by blind tasting. It's pretty darn impressive. So that geeky side actually likes a lot of the more rare varietals. So that's why we still have Gruner Veltliner. That's why, and actually some of these more rare varietals are becoming more common. That's why we have Grenache Blanc. I love Albarino. It's getting much more popular now. So we can be more diverse. We would be doing a test during this period. Okay, so let's try to do a test, even though you can't really guess. Which region, what either wine region comes close to Monterey in acreage cultivated? Can you guess? Okay, raise your hand. Is it Sonoma? Okay. Is it Napa? Is it Paso, which is a small region actually? Okay. Is it Santa Barbara? Okay, so it's actually Napa. Oh, isn't that amazing? So this is a fast fact to play with your friends. You're going to win. Napa and Monterey grow about as well. We cultivate the same number of acreage. We go back and forth year after year. It depends on how everybody's doing, what the fires were, who's pulling grapes, that kind of thing. But we're both around 45,000 acres of cultivated grapes. You know, sometimes 44, sometimes 46. We may see a decrease in that. We didn't have any effects on our vineyards. We did on our grapes, but not on our vineyards with the fire. Napa did though. So we're going to see a decrease there. Both of our regions feel pressure from pests. So we pull some grapes due to some pests, and as does Napa. So there's a fluctuation. I think this is really interesting. Paso is a sub-region of San Luis Obispo, you know, even though it's like it's the powerhouse in San Luis Obispo and in many ways on the Central Coast. And they've done really, because there was nothing to do in Paso before, they've done a great job at really focusing their economics around wine and have built that up. But they only plant about 29,000 acres. Lodi is very big, by the way. Okay, AVAs. What the heck is an AVA? American Viticulture Area. These are federally designated areas. So when folks were really interested in the 70s, 80s, even was there one in the 90s? There might have been one in the 90s. They said these growing regions within Monterey County have distinct characteristics. And we want to put a boundary around that and basically claim it as this brand. So our most popular, besides Monterey, is Santa Lucia Highlands. Have folks heard of Santa Lucia Highlands? So Santa Lucia Highlands is at the northern end of the Santa Lucia mountain ranges. So as you're going down the Salinas Valley to the west. It is really our premium AVA in terms of the dollars they get for their grapes. And it is, again, a Burgundy region. It is cooler in temperature. And so primarily grows Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Pinot Noir is where they get the most money. We have 9 AVAs within the county. Now, AVAs get really confusing because Monterey County is actually not an AVA. And at some point, if we get some bandwidth, we would actually like to expand what we call the Monterey AVA, which is this big AVA all through here. It does not include the entire county. I think my board agrees, we'd like to expand this big AVA to include the entire county. Because what's happened is this Monterey AVA excludes 3 other AVAs, but there are 5 within it. So it's very confusing. Also, Monterey County sits within the largest AVA in the country, which is the Central Coast AVA. It is from San Francisco, southern San Francisco, through southern Santa Barbara. It's a really big AVA. AVAs are really confusing. So the AVAs that you will see on labels in Monterey County mostly are Santa Lucia Highlands, also known as SLH, Chalone, Carmel Valley, you'll see a little bit of, Arroyo Seco, really great at Sauvignon Blancs from Arroyo Seco, great. And then San Bernabé, you'll see. Haines Valley, we might see more in the future. Haines Valley is really farther south. It's beautiful. And look to get some cab from Haines Valley. And I think that quality, it's good quality now. It's just going to keep on increasing. I think we'll start to see more tannins coming out of those cabs as it gets hotter. We're actually, excuse me, I don't have COVID. We're a pretty small growing region in terms of business entities. So remember, we saw that Paso only has 29,000 cultivated acres. They have over 300 wineries. We have 82 licensed wineries in our county, and really only about 72 of those are legitimately selling wines. So we really don't have many wineries for the amount of land that we're cultivating and the amount of wine we're producing. Where I say 30 different varietals, that's over 10 acres. There are 80 to 90 miles of vineyards if you go from basically north to south. So we're a very long region. And then we grow more. So we grow more Chardonnay, and this can fluctuate, than any other county. It's really important to say county there because there are some AVAs that are cross county, and there's one in Lodi and Sacramento that actually, when they're combined, they grow more than us. So, but we grow more Chardonnay and Pinot Noir than any county. And in terms of Pinot Noir, we have a larger crop than any county. Okay, so what are the top 5 varietals? Can you guess? So it's Chardonnay is our largest. At 38% of the acreage, it's 34% of the value. White wines are cheaper or have less value in terms of money than reds do. And this is grapes, actually. Pinot Noir only has 19% of our acreage, but 29% of the value. So you can see that's where we're getting our most money per ton. Merlot is actually our 3rd wine, and we need a pro Merlot movie to come along because what was that movie called? I can't remember right now, but the movie that slammed Merlot, it really affected the Merlot market. But Merlot still really needed. It's needed in blending of reds, so it's used a lot. And Cabernet Sauvignon. And as I mentioned, I think we will continue to see more Cab in this county, and that it will continue to improve in quality as well. Right now, I actually like it. It's very fruity, but not as heavy tannins. And I think we'll see more tannin elevation. And then Riesling is actually our 5th largest. So surprising. Wine Spectator really likes our wines and says SLH has Santa Lucia Highlands AVA has some of the best Pinot Noirs in the state. So we've really seen growth in the tasting rooms as well. We have approximately 65 tasting rooms. There's been a couple of closures because of COVID, but not a lot. They're in Carmel Valley, in Carmel and Monterey, and along River Road. And then Scheid is off of Highway 1. Scheid has 2 off of Highway 1 near Greenfield, and then Chalone on the other side of the valley. The trend happened, so there was a desire well before I got here to have really these vineyard-based tasting rooms and at the wineries like Morgan and Buchanan and Pizzoni, and they wanted to develop more. And honestly, the county restrictions on growth were really hard. And those wineries got tired of trying to fight it. So also it was hard to attract tourists to the Salinas Valley. So since we already have, 45 million tourists coming a year, and mostly to the peninsula, the wineries realized, it's really a better bet for us to go to the peninsula. So what we have seen, so there was a huge movement towards Carmel Valley and the peninsula. We have seen more interest recently in going back to River Road. Certainly the market is wanting that. And I think we'll see more, especially with the younger winemakers. I'm not going to say anything now, but I know of 2 that should announce something sometime this year. And then in non-COVID times, we love parties. But I really don't predict that we're going to be able to do anything until late October or November. And you better believe right now I can see everybody like trying to get dates for late October and November. All the community events are trying to line it up. So we'll be talking about when we hold an event in the fall, and God willing, we will be able to. I'm almost done. So one of the things, wine laws are very weird. It's not an easy business to be in. As I had mentioned before, it's rather antiquated, and we're still definitely affected by prohibition. So one of the laws that we were able to pass through a couple of years ago, which is pretty cool, is a conjunctive labeling law. And that meant if somebody and I'm just going to pick on Napa, if somebody from Napa would buy our Chardonnay or our Pinot, which happens all the time, Before, they never had a say it was made in Monterey County or it came from one of our, like they could just say Santa Lucia Highlands and people would think, oh, that's in Napa. Because wherever wine is made, that location has to be put on the bottle. That's one of the laws. So what we said is, if you're taking advantage of our grapes and our AVA's name and their brand, leveraging that brand, we want you to also say Monterey County, so they know it's not in Napa. So now we passed this law with the help of Mark Stone, Assemblymember Mark Stone, and others. We didn't have any trouble getting this passed. In 2016, the governor signed it. And then in 2019, it went into full effect. So anybody that uses one of our AVAs on the label also has to put Monterey County on the label. Another thing that we've really worked on is just getting more Monterey wines on our local wine list. And when I started, there was about 14%. Pre-COVID, it was over 25%. So we're doing better. COVID, I don't know where we're going to land afterwards. So yes, come visit. So that's it. So let's answer. Okay, I'm done talking. Or maybe not. I'm going to stop sharing if that's okay, and then look at all the questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kim. You know, it's amazing, just the history here in Monterey County, the history of the people going back so many years, so many decades. Combination of that and with just the bountiful land that we have, it makes such a unique mix. And so it's really fascinating to hear just the science and all the different variations of wine. Going into the chat box window here. It looks like the first comment, Julia Childs, love the Chardonnay from Chalon, and it looks like it has been served at the White House. So very cool.
It has, and if I also may mention, there was this really famous wine competition in France, the Judgment in Paris, and Chalon Chardonnay actually won third place, but nobody ever talked about third place. It was a competition between American and French wines. And American wines won, and we came in third, which is pretty remarkable.
Did they ever make a movie? I want to say with Alan Rickman, I think.
I don't know.
I don't remember, but no, I vaguely remember they made a movie, but very cool to know there. Let's see, questions. First one we have here, can you expand on water use / conservation and issues facing wine production in Monterey County?
Yes. So almost all vineyards are, well, first of all, let me tell you, grapes do not like a lot of water. And you get better quality grapes making them struggle a little bit. Struggling is good. So we do not overwater grapes. They're drip, but almost all grapes are drip system, unless there's some obscure reason not. It's a waste of water for one, and then it's bad for our plants to do overhead. So we're all drip system, low water use, and with the use of technology, we've got some amazing technology right now in water use. You know, where each block, each row has its own water monitor, and different, whatever the plant needs, whatever the soil and the plants needs, that's the amount of water that's going into the soil. There's tremendous amount of technology happening right now in water. So I feel really good about water production. We've got a couple of vineyards that are really experimenting with dry farming, which also intensifies the flavor of the grapes and but reduces the size of the grapes. So if you reduce the size of the grapes, it means you're not going to get that much production. So it's only really premium vineyards that are doing that, and it is hard to do. And you know, we've had these spikes sometimes around Labor Day where we've gone up to 115 degrees. And, you know, even some of the vineyards that do that realize that they needed to water in those spikes anyway. But there is a lot of experimentation around dry farming and interest in that now. Biggest issues right now facing from a vineyard perspective, we have issues with vine mealybug throughout the state, and it's bad. So it is a virus carrying pest, and just like COVID, you know, it's our wine grape COVID. And you know, I think there was 3,000 or 5,000 acres pulled last year because of it. It's significant. And it's really hard to figure out what to do about it. We come together on a monthly basis to talk about what we're going to do. We work closely with UC Davis. There's this really cool program that I'm hoping we get to be an experiment, part of an experiment for, that's having dogs go in and sniff out the vectors that these little bugs that carry the disease. So disease is hard. Another thing that's recently come up that's hideous is one of our vineyards was for sale or lease, and a lemon producer outbid other vineyards. This was a Santa Lucia Highlands property. So what's happening with lemons and oranges throughout the rest of the country is they've got a really bad pest. And right now, and we've talked to UC Davis about this, it seems like our region might not have that. And just because of the coolness, we might be able to skip that pest altogether. So there's more interest in lemon and grapes, and so that's really sad. And there's nothing we can do. That's money. There's nothing we can do about it. Okay. So next,
Looks like one of the earlier questions. How would someone start a career, get involved in the production and processing and marketing of wine?
so there's a couple of ways. One, you can go to school for it. So that is a tradition. There's a traditional path. I have to say, those more traditional folks, I mean, they have great careers too. But if you were to ask me who are our best winemakers in Monterey County right now, they did not go to school for winemaking. So I would say Ian Brand is one of our best winemakers. Brand and family, it's the last tasting room in Carmel Valley. They have a winery. It's just an industrial winery in Salinas, in downtown Salinas. And I don't know what Ian studied in college. Like, you know, they just all sort of fall into wine. And then he studied with Randall Graham, who is a famous biodynamic winemaker, and you know, into natural wines. And Ian will never do biodynamics and will never do natural wines, but his wine is beautiful and really so. And we have 4 or 5 really young winemakers right now in their 20s and early 30s, and only one of them went to school. So either UC Davis or Cal Poly. And if you're interested, anybody, it doesn't matter what your age is, I am happy to connect you. You know, you can go, like, people in wine are nice, and they love when people are interested in what they're doing. And you know, when we're back open, like Dennis Hoey would love to have people come and show interest, you know, and help with harvest, and, you know, be there during the bottling process and be there during the winemaking process and see what it really takes. It is a lot of cleaning, which people don't realize. So it's, you know, they're yeast, it's fermentation yeast. And we never want yeast that we don't want in our wine. So wineries are very, very, very clean. Like, you can eat off the floors in wineries. So I want always for people to realize that winemaking is also a lot of cleaning. And it's a lot of hard work too. It's a lot, but I love it. I love the culture. Everybody in it loves the culture.
That's fantastic. Let's see, one of our other questions here. What appellation is the most unknown in Monterey County?
San Lucas is the most unknown, but I don't think that's one that we'll ever see grow. The most unknown that I think has notoriety potential is San Antonio Valley. So going down 101, it is to the west of King City. And there are a couple of producers there. Pierce, who has a great little tasting room on Foam Street, beautiful wines. They specialize in growing Spanish and Portuguese varietals. I think the AVA is only like 14 miles wide or something. It's really small. And they're rocking it. So San Antonio Valley, go try Pierce. And his wines, both Ian and Pierce, the Pierce family wines, they're inexpensive. You know, they try to keep it in the $20 range, and, you know, it's all relative, but that's a good price for homegrown, homemade, wine. If you can keep it in the $20 range or like low 30s for some bigger reds, that's great pricing.
Actually, good to know. And that actually leads to the next question we have here. What three wines between $10 to $20 are your favorites? And it
Oh my
must be
God,
hard to pin down.
10 to 20 is really a hard price point because that limits me to, if it was 20 to 30, it's a little easier, but 10 to 20, I don't even know. It'd probably be some of Kendall Jackson's wines, like KJ Jackson Family Wines. I'm so impressed with that you can get in retail. I'm so impressed with their ability to produce really high quality wines that taste the same every year. I think J. Lore is the same, but their prices are a little higher than that. So I would say Jackson Family Wines. Sorry, if you go a little higher, I'd have more.
Gotcha. Let's see. I think this is something on a lot of people's minds right now, especially with COVID. And I know this can vary from tasting room to tasting room. How do we taste or make a trip of visiting a winery in Monterey County during this time?
Right. Yeah. So our website has a list of all the tasting rooms and maps you can download. Also, you can call me anytime. Send me an email. My contact. It is not hard to find my cell phone. Believe me, it's really easy. There are 3 distinct regions, and I would really separate that into 4. One is to make maybe 2 days realistically of going down to South County, going to Chalone, and then going to River Road tasting rooms, and then Scheid as well. And then Carmel is just a walkabout during the day. So that can be 1 day. There are a couple of tasting rooms within Monterey. There are about 5. They're walkable for me. They might be a little drivable for others because some are in Cannery Row and others are actually on Alvarado Street. And then Carmel Valley. So Carmel Valley has the highest density of any region. And with that density, so I think Carmel Valley is really fun to go to, but it needs a couple of days to visit. And so what's going on right now in regards to COVID? Wine is an essential industry, according to the federal government. You do not have to question it. It's already decided. So we can do everything. The only thing we can't do that is limited by COVID, and right now we're having this issue, is not issue, it's just the way it is. We cannot provide tastings. Just like restaurants can't do outdoor meals services, we can also not do outdoor tastings. As soon as this stay-at-home order is lifted, we will be able to go back to outdoor tastings. But we are able to sell you wine. So almost all tasting rooms are open. They've cut their hours, but pretty much between Thursdays through Sundays, 12 to 5, tasting rooms are open. The only ones that aren't, Bernardus is not, but if you call them, they can get you wine.
Excellent, excellent. Our next question here has to do with the Carmel Valley fires, which unfortunately ravaged Monterey County last year. How have the Carmel Valley fires affected the grape growth in the past year? Will the smoke in the air impact the taste of the wine or health of the vines?
Yeah. So it was just so tragic. And we all, as a worldwide industry, we need to get used to fires and figure out what to do with fires. So there's definitely wines that didn't get made. I'm very interested to see how much wine actually comes out of this year. And a lot of red wines didn't get made because if you have smoke in your wine, if there's nothing you can do. And people did experiment with trying to figure out something to get that smoke flavor out, but there's nothing. And I've tasted barbecue wine. I don't care for it. Somebody else might like it, but it tastes like a fire. It tastes like barbecue. So it's changing, from a winemaker's perspective, it is changing your wine. And if your brand is important to you, you didn't make it. Now, whites are different. So reds are made with skins. They're fermented with skins. The smoke influence, the chemical change caused by the smoke is actually in the skins. It's not in the pulp. So whites, the skins never go into the fermentation. They're taken off immediately. So whites actually are okay. So we're not seeing it with whites. So there'll be lots of 2020 whites, 2020 reds, no. And that's going to be throughout the state. I have to say, you know, we were getting smoke influence testing in Paso and in Santa Barbara. Of course, not to the extent we have it, but they were getting it. There was smoke all over the state. So it was a brutal year. And I don't know the numbers. I haven't seen them yet. I'm afraid to see them. I also don't have a way of collecting. I wait till the state collects. And it's not something that people share easily. So as far as the health of the vines are fine. They're totally fine. As I said before, grapevines actually do better when it's harder. Not that we want fires all the time, but you know, they're fine struggling. Grapevines are better struggling. The other thing that is interesting, and we have been, I know it does not feel like a blessing if you lost your house in this fire, but the way we've had fires compared to the way Napa and Sonoma have had fires, even though, you know, we did have like what, 64,000 people evacuated, we only lost 53 homes. We did not lose any wineries. We did not lose any vineyards. The way Napa and Sonoma's fires have been, it's going into major residential areas, destroying thousands of homes, destroying vineyards, destroying wineries. So we're just lucky that we managed to keep our fires more in the backcountry. And my kids I used to live in Big Sur. My kid's dad has land in Big Sur, you know, so I have awoken my kids to send them down to their land to tell them there was fire on the land. So I'm not trying to be callous in saying that that we're lucky, but we are, you know, we don't have the mass impact of the fires that these other regions do.
Well, it's certainly a tragic event that ravaged you know, Monterey County, and you know, it's sad to see the you know, this is one of the effects of it, unfortunately. One of our next questions here: have you pulled grapes from the Sierra foothills / Shenandoah Valley?
I haven't. I haven't tasted them. And they're getting. I don't know about the Shenandoah Valley, but the Sierra foothills I have, and they're definitely getting better. It's what folks do. I mean, this is part of the reason I love the wine industry. This afternoon, I'm talking to everybody else from all of the wine regions in the state. We meet every Wednesday afternoon. And like when our wineries have trouble, they call their friends. Like if your truck breaks down and you're on your way to harvest, you call another winemaker that's your competitor. And you say, can you pick up this load for me? You know, I'm in deep trouble. Or if I've got problems, I can't figure out what's going on with my wine. It's all chemistry, by the way. I'm calling my competitors, you know, that in the market we would perceive as competitors, and saying, what should I do? Like people don't get that there could be an industry that is so cooperative, yet in competition all the time. And so that doesn't really answer your question about what those grapes are like, but it just tells you that I talk to those people all the time. I'm talking to them this afternoon, and I want you to know that. Like I love being in the wine industry. They're good people, and they care about the community and they care about each other. So anyway, okay.
Our next question here. Let's see. Why have so many other regions done better to promote wine / tourism, and we've not changed or grown much in about 20 plus years?
Yeah, I think that's pretty simple. So Napa has nothing without wine. Paso has nothing without wine. Monterey County doesn't need wine, and we'll have 45 million tourists. You know, look at the beauty we live in. Those other counties don't have that. So for these other communities that have grown so much, it's because they have been supported in growing. It has been an economic development push to promote wine, to encourage wine, to promote all of the ancillary businesses around wine. In Monterey County, it's excuse my language, a pain in the butt to develop around here. And businesses get discouraged. You know how hard it is to do business here. It's hard to do business in Monterey County. It's hard to develop in Monterey County. So you know, people that are interested can easily get discouraged. So it's really an economic development thing that Monterey County as a whole, we have other things that attract people. So wine has never been, although it's important and recognized as important, it's never had the economic development push behind it or the ease that other counties have allowed wine to have. We've never done that. It's always hard. Everything's hard.
Definitely an eye-opening perspective there, and I think you have a very good point.
Steve, do you agree with that? Is he still here?
Oh, he is. I think
mean,
he might be muted there.
okay, yeah.
So,
It's an interesting, yeah.
our next question here, and something you've already kind of touched on there. Can you mention any other ways that COVID has affected the wine industry?
Yep. And it's actually, you know how hard times also are good. Like we learn about ourselves. We learn what matters. And in business, we learn what matters too, right? So it's really it's been hard, no question, it's been hard, but we've learned what mattered in business. And in many ways, businesses have been able to streamline. So I'll give you some examples. In tasting rooms, we realized that really it's better for us. We make more money actually if we don't serve a lot of people and provide just a few people with a lot of better service. You know, putting in reservation systems, really paying attention to people. We can sell actually a lot more wine than bringing in a lot of different people and just not giving that customized service. So tasting rooms have learned a lot about that. We've learned relationships make a freaking difference. So if you're a small winery, and we all know this, you wouldn't be in Rotary if you didn't believe this, right? So if you're a small winery where 85% of what you make during the year is sold through your tasting room, which is most of the small wineries, your relationships matter. And locals like you kept those wineries alive this year. You know, there were people that would come into wineries like Dennis Hoey, who I mentioned earlier, Odonata. People still, they love him so much. They go and buy cases. They have plenty of wine at home. They just want him to be able to stay in business. Plus, people are drinking a lot more wine right now. And I also think there's more time, not that I have more time in my life, but there are people that have more time in their lives, and wine is interesting to learn about. So I think we see more people learning about wine. If you were selling just to restaurants, you're in deep trouble. You lost a lot of money. If you were in retail chains like Safeway, you know, or Target, you're doing really well. So it really, we call them channels. It depends on where your channels are. And then if you're a smaller winery, it depends on your relationships with your customers, and everybody's working.
Gotcha. It sounds like there's definitely a lot of very passionate customer base. They're willing to buy a case to keep their favorite wine supplier in business. Very cool to hear.
It's very cool. This is a good community.
Let's see, one of our last questions here. Are there any differences that you have noticed with the up and coming popularity of canned wine and the process of storage in comparison to the more traditional glass and cork?
Yeah, I like canned wine for hiking. It doesn't preserve long. So I think it's a really great thing, like just for like a day trip or something, you know, you're going on a boat, you're going, and it's not so much the quality of the wine, you want decent wine. So there are more folks doing canned wine, but I think it has a limit to how big that market will get. I think it is a convenience product. And also, gosh, there's so much expansion right now in the alcohol market that's canned beyond wine, like, you know, Truly and all of these different beverages that are coming through with alcohol in them. So I don't think it'll grow a lot more than it is already. And I do think it's, you know, for a lot of brands, it's a good fit. My friend owns Nacho Business in Monterey. They just moved to, and so they sell canned wine, like they only want canned products. So there are some food stores that will only sell canned. So it's a good thing to have in your lineup. It tastes very different.
Gotcha.
It totally tastes different. Glass makes a difference. Corks make a difference. Corks, well, okay, that's a bigger argument. Some people, I'm not even gonna go there, but corks or screw tops make a difference. But you know, oh boy, that's like a whole thing, and we get into big arguments if we had winemakers here. So my opinion of boxed wine is I like it, but again, it's different. So I think you have to look at, excuse me, why are you drinking the wine and what is it that you want to get out of it? So I'm not going to have a Pizzoni out of a box because it's going to taste different. So if it's a really high quality wine, I want to taste the place. I want to taste the sunshine. I want to taste the limestone. I want to experience the vineyard. I want to experience the process, and I can in a really finely produced wine. If I just want to appreciate a glass of wine with dinner that tastes pretty good, then it's fine if it's a boxed wine or if it's a canned wine. So there's a different layer of appreciation, and I think all of them are good. And as long as the wine is decently made, excuse me, there's a stability to the wine and a balance to the wine and the structure. It's a great wine, whether it's, $2 chuck or whether it is, a multi-thousands dollars of bubbles from champagne. And honestly, I have had some multi-thousand-dollar wines that haven't been as good as the $65 wines, or maybe I'm not that good at my palate. So, okay.
Well, it sounds like there's definitely a wine for every occasion and wine for every mood as well. So it's a very good point. All right, well, that looks like all we have for questions in the chat box window, unless someone else would like to possibly raise their hand. I'm just going to scan through the cameras here. All right, if we have no more questions there, Kim, thank you so much. Greatly.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for your service.
Well, thank you so much for coming here today and giving us this wonderful presentation, learning not just about wine, but the history of wine in Monterey County and a lot of the scientific know-how that goes into it. Fascinating to see where the wine industry is going to be in 10, 20 years, especially with all the scientific breakthroughs.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic.
Feel free to reach out.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording function. Thank you so much again.